The Liquid Race to World First Heroic Week pre-show. I'm your host Cams, and I'm joined by Dratnos. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited for this Race to World First to finally get started here. It is the final Heroic Week pre-show. I mean, I've loved doing these Heroic Week pre-shows with you, Cams, but I'm very excited to get into the Mythic tomorrow.
Yeah, me as well. And I don't want to do this to you, but I was checking. You have a little hole in your shirt back there.
Oh no!
But if you want to cover that up,
where?
We do have some new apparel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, tl.gg/RWF. You can see the Nerub-ar Palace liquid apparel. It has just come out. I see some of the players have been wearing it. It looks very good. I think.
Yeah, I got a jersey yesterday. I guess the jersey it is one of the ones that's in that tl.gg/RWF set. I think when we get the graphic up, it's that top left one.
Yes.
There, yeah, I got one of those. So that's one out of the 6 Infinity Stones of these that I'm trying to collect.
Yeah, are you trying to get all 6?
Yep, I'm trying to steal them all. But whichever ones I can't steal, I will be purchasing from tl.gg/RWF when the race is over.
Nice. I don't think you have to steal all of them. They'll probably give us some. But
it's more fun if it's stealing, is what I've learned.
Okay. The thrill.
The thrill is the main thing that I'm doing it for, yeah.
Okay, I see. Yeah, we talked before when we looked at these. We were saying the top mouse pad was our favorite.
Yep.
I've seen them in person. I kind of like that bottom one now.
Bottom one does look really nice, but I just love the aesthetic of the top one. But I could see the bottom one being a good choice too.
Yeah.
Not really a wrong answer with any of these.
No, not at all.
You can purchase. I'd say get them all. See for yourself.
Yeah, if you're looking to get one, tl.gg/RWF. We're selling them all race. You'll be seeing us in them, all the players. Looks great. So yeah, thank you Liquid for that. And thank you to all the other sponsors of this event. Coinbase, Secret Lab, Monster Energy, Alienware, RaiderIO, Wowhead, Warcraft Logs, and DungeonDojo. Thank you, everybody. We got a little bike coming by in the past.
I love how we just have the setup here where everybody's able to go past. The kitchen's just over there as well, so you're going to be seeing a lot of people moving from the player area over there to the kitchen over there during the race.
Yeah, I know. You can tell when the meals are.
Yeah.
They come flooding through, and it smells very good right here.
That is speed. What's the speed limit around these parts?
No, that thing can move. He's going to run over a cord. If we go offline, you guys will know what happened.
You know what happened.
Yeah, just to give everybody a quick run-up of what we're going to do in the show, we're going to kind of explain some things like what splits are and then what the Raiders have done with these splits, how they come along. We're checking on their item level, things like that. I don't know if we want to run over the bosses. We will go over Queen Ansurek.
We've gone over the other 7 in the previous 2 heroic pre-shows, so if you want to go watch those VODs, a pretty good time, pretty chill thing you could be doing, because especially if you're, hungry for some Race to World First content, it's going to start tomorrow, right? So some pre-shows to watch from now till then could help tide you over.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll replay them here, but they'll be on the VODs.
Yeah, you can check the VODs. Go find them. Go on a little scavenger hunt.
Yeah, and if you guys want to see what has happened in the Heroic Show, who got the Heroic World First, we have a Coinbase leaderboard. We can see which guilds got in there and quickly downed Queen Ansurek. Yeah,
Heroic World First is an interesting one. The end boss is actually pretty tough on Heroic as well, but there's this interesting thing where, going for it early on versus doing your splits and stuff, gearing up your characters, but it does look like Last Exile was the guild that picked up the World First, at least according to our Coinbase leaderboard. Got a couple of guilds you may recognize on there as well, such as XD, that's an NA guild. Usually does fairly well there in 9th on the Heroic standings. And Blue Shoe, which is also known as End Myth, I think, in 2nd there. So a couple of guilds you may recognize and a bunch of great gamers all in this Heroic leaderboard. Can't wait to see how everybody does on Mythic.
Yeah, thank you, Coinbase. And we can see how Liquid's doing with our Honda boss progress.
Yeah, Liquid has still 7 out of 8. So I think they've downed Ansurek now, but maybe the kills haven't all been, publicked or whatever, but I'm pretty sure that has either happened. It would be a bit late in the game for them to have not gotten their Heroic Ansureks done yet. I think they've been doing that over the past, say, 24 hours or so.
Yeah, I saw the achievements flooding in on my character, so in the guild chat. So
nice flex.
They've been downing it.
Okay, cool. You got a character in Liquid? No, we get it.
Yeah, they've had to remove a lot of people actually, and I've got to keep my spot because they each have so many characters now. The
that makes sense. Yeah,
the limit is
only 1,000 or something, right? In the guild, and everybody's got 20 characters. That fills up real quick.
Yeah. So congrats to Liquid on their Ansurek. Yeah, we're gonna look at their item level later. I'm excited to see. We saw last night THD was #1 in the world.
Yeah, he was 617 or something, which. Pretty good. He had all of the very rare items from the raid as well. There are 3 that can be used by everybody, and he had them all.
Were they all heroic?
I think they were all heroic, yeah.
My goodness.
Pretty impressive. 626 gear on those slots. Be very useful as we do move into Mythic, which here's a quick look at the boss web. The order this tier, a very linear raid. First 4 bosses just have to be done in order. Then you do get a choice between Brute Twister Ovinax and Nexus Princess Kaiveza. I think the conventional wisdom right now is that the Brute Twister would probably be the 5th, and Nexus Princess will probably be the 6th and slightly harder of those 2. But that does remain to be seen. And then we get to Silken Court and Queen Ansurek, which both have the potential to be some of the most difficult and incredible Race to World first encounters. But of course, we'll have to see how that actually shakes out once they do get there.
Yeah, I'm excited. And so we do have some breaking news earlier today. There were some changes that came in. They did a little bit of heroic week tuning.
So we got the Friday patch notes, and then we got a bonus extra nerfs announced today. So Fury and Arcane were already getting nerfed on the weekly reset, and they're getting even more nerfed. There's an extra 3% nerf coming into Fury, and an extra also about 3% nerf, but not an aura nerf. It's just to Arcane Blast and Arcane Missiles coming into Arcane as well.
You can see here, most of this, we probably won't go over all of it. These are the changes that came in earlier. And yeah, you can see here, Mage, it was these 2. The Arcane Blast and Arcane Missile damage was today.
Yep.
Saying it's a couple percent. And then the Warrior here at the bottom, this one, all damage reduced by 3%. But from what I'm understanding is these are the 2 classes that, or specs that need it the most. Maybe Enhanced Shaman, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, these 2 specs definitely got nerfed a little bit less than Enhanced did, but it's worth noting that Fury Warrior and Arcane Mage have pretty weak set bonuses, and Enhancement, especially before the nerf, had a very strong 4 set bonus. So going into next week, as everybody is putting on those 4 pieces, maybe that'll mean that Enhanced is actually still looking really, really, really good. I think that Fury Warrior, Arms Warrior, Arcane Mage, Enhancement Shaman, all are still looking like really great choices, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see multiple of them, like 2 of each on some of these fights. Probably not 2 of each Warrior spec, but 2 total Warriors choosing between Arms and Fury, maybe even a 1-and-1 split on some of these fights.
And actually, do you want to quickly run through all these, all the changes this week?
Yeah, so
start with Death Knight.
This is the tuning that will be coming in on the weekly reset, which up first we have some changes coming in to Sand Lane Death Knight. Now, there was no danger of anybody using that hero talent tree before, and I regret to report there's probably still no danger of anybody playing Sand Lane as either Blood or Unholy, but it's nice to see it get buffed nonetheless. Just the other 2 options were pretty far ahead. And then some Blood-specific Sand Lane buffs as well. But again, still, I think you're going to see Deathbringer being used almost exclusively by Blood DKs.
Yeah, and it looks like this Havoc change was just a bug fix of their AoE, their I-beam scaling.
So, yeah, sometimes there are bug fixes that are quality of life. Sometimes there are bug fixes that make a spec better in some cases and worse in others. The Havoc bug fix that we're looking at here is just also a straight-up buff, right? Like, if they were doing any damage before, it's almost always going to be more now after this bug fix comes in. So you can think of it as like, oh, that shouldn't count as a buff. You know, it wasn't factored into the sims or something like that. You can make those arguments, but either way, however you slice it, they are going to be doing more damage next week than they were this week.
Yeah, always a good thing. And someone else doing a lot more damage this week than next, but...
Yeah, you know. The Balanced Druid meme here is, what's 10% more of 0 damage? Maybe still 0 damage, unfortunately. We'll see, though. Maybe it's enough to make them considered for Race to World first. I kind of suspect that that spec is still the least likely candidate for bringing Mark of the Wild to the raid.
Yeah, I do too, and I think I've kind of picked the Raiders' brains a little bit. They won't tell me too much, but they will leak Boomkin is bad, so... Yeah,
you got to be careful, because sometimes there's a false leak, operation going on, so...
Being psyoped.
Could be 7 Boomkin tier, we'll see.
Okay, yeah, maybe a good Starfall boss. And Feral, another potential candidate, but maybe not.
I actually think it's probably one of the top 2 options
Okay.
to bring Mark of the Wild. I feel like Feral and Guardian are both the best ways to get Mark of the Wild, and then Resto, and then Balance would be my ranking list of
Okay.
sources of Mark of the Wild.
Resto's that bad, huh?
So Resto's getting a big buff here, but they were doing such anemic healing in Heroic this week, and it's the kind of healer that tends to not be doing much more than it's healing, right? You're not providing a damage reduction cooldown in the form of something like a barrier, right? You don't have a massive healing CD that scales with the incoming damage like Rewind. You don't have, Symbol of Hope. You don't have all those things. The main piece of utility that you're bringing is you have Innervate for another healer, and you have Stampeding Roar. And Stampeding Roar does look pretty good on some of these later fights, but I still suspect that Resto Druid is going to be not the premier way to bring a Mark of the Wild.
Okay. All right, all you healers out there, learn to tank.
Yep,
Sounds
log
like.
in. Go bear form.
Yeah, and here's another one. Interesting, I think. Evoker, disintegrate damage increased by 10%. That is the healer and Devastation will benefit from that. And then Devastation gets an Eternity Surge buff.
Yeah, Evoker, low-key, it's been getting a lot of buffs over the past couple weeks. It's been getting a lot of bug fixes as well to Dev. Disintegrate's increasing Prez's damage. Prez already looked really good as well. Og, of course, is phenomenal. Neither of these changes affect Og, but I think all 3 Evoker specs are looking quite compelling. Dev has been really shooting up in my estimations over the past few days. Looking at some of the logs it's been doing, when you factor in the fact they're going to be getting this kind of large single target increase next week, 10% on Disintegrate. Disintegrate and Eternity Surge are a lot of their single target damage, and their AoE, their burst AoE was already quite good, and also you've got an extra Time Spiral in the raid for every Evoker that you can slot in. Time Spiral is a very powerful effect, and it was nerfed going into War Within to be a 3-minute CD instead of a 2-minute CD. Okay. So getting more Evokers to get more of those Time Spirals back, I think, is a really interesting option, and I think all 3 specs are candidates for doing it.
Do they still have Zephyr?
They do still have Zephyr. Yeah, Zephyr does affect 5 people, so you got 4 Evokers, you got full raid coverage of it.
Yeah, true. All right, and now one of the other all-stars, I think, Mage. They did a Living Bomb visual thing, we can ignore. And then Arcane, as we talked about earlier, they nerfed Blast and Missiles. It's about a 3%. And then this other stuff, I don't know what it added up into. It's for their Sun Fury hero talent tree.
I'd heard that this was all also in that 2 to 3% range.
Okay.
There's some change you could make to the rotation that made it not as impactful. So, yeah, maybe a combined 5 or 6% nerf coming into Arcane Mage. This was another front-runner spec in terms of people expecting them to be stacked going into this tier. And I suspect these nerfs are probably enough to maybe take 1 Arcane Mage out of the plan, right? Maybe you take it down from, say, 3 to 2 Arcane Mages in a lot of top comps, but I'm not sure. I could still see there being more of them. You obviously need at least 1 Mage, and I think Arcane is still going to be a great option for that, although Frost also is a very good spec, is not being nerfed, and has a natural synergy against the damage profiles of these last few fights. It lines up really well, so I wouldn't be surprised if Frost was something that at least was experimented with on some of these fights as well.
Okay, interesting. And then Fire, it is getting a large buff, but seems to kind of still be at the bottom.
Yeah, I suspect that we're not going to see much Fire this tier either. It's a shame. I think the Fire build is really fun right now, but alas.
Yeah, it's had its time in the sun.
That's true. And I'm sure it will again someday.
Oh, yeah.
Next tier, probably. Who are we kidding?
Yeah, next tier and every MDI following.
Yeah.
All right, Monk, Mistweaver, healing increased by 3%, and then buffed damage. They've buffed healer damage on, I think, everybody but Priest.
Yeah, healer damage going up a little bit across the board, and Mistweaver a little tap upwards in terms of healing. I think Mistweaver is probably still the least likely monk to be brought. I think Windwalker and Brewmaster are the main candidates for bringing the Mystic Touch, and I don't think you're going to want more than 1 monk because there's so much other good stuff that you've got Fury Warriors, you've got Arcane Mages, you've got all flavors of Evokers, you've got Shamans, Elemental and Enhancement, and Resto, all flavors of Shaman as well. You want to kind of fill your raid up with these great specs, and I think that leaves Monk as a, let's bring 1 for Mystic Touch and not mess around with too many more.
Yeah, I guess they'll take up the male slots.
Yeah.
No hunters. I don't think so.
I don't think Monk can use mail. I think Monk's a leather.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking the Evokers and the Shamans.
Yeah, the Evokers and the Shamans can do that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, weird little segue. Okay, then Windwalker, got a nerf. I'm not sure what this equals to. This is a lot of
Yeah, I
words
think they're
don't
not
understand.
talenting that anymore, but I don't think
Okay.
that's the end of the world for them. But I heard it described as a sad because that talent was fun type situation. But
Okay.
the way their set bonus works, I think that probably was why they did this, because Darting Hurricane is a Tiger Palm enhancing effect. And the set bonus is also a Tiger Palm enhancing set bonus, so maybe there was some cringe rotation stuff happening with that. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right, Holy Paladin, healing reduced by 6%. I heard they were quite strong. And then again, the healer damage buffed.
Yep,
And then,
there is that
Avenging
transfer
Crusader.
nerf. Mhm.
Yeah. Nerf
Which-
from 260 was 420.
Yeah, that is somewhat offset by the damage being increased on the spells. But I do think, yeah, I mean, overall, this is certainly a nerf to Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin, though, was doing a lot of healing. It was looking really good here during Heroic Week. I think they're going to be fine. It's also a very mana-efficient spec in a tier where I think that's going to be quite valuable. So I think one Holy Paladin is overwhelmingly likely to be played by pretty much everybody. And I think other Paladins are not going to be as needed. It would just be kind of case by case if you have, probably not in the Race to World first, but in lower ranked guilds, if you're like, oh, we've got somebody who wants to play Rat Pally, somebody who wants to play Prop Pally. I think both of those look like options, but maybe not Prop Pally. Prop Pally has been kind of getting beat up in my experience. I don't know. I've been getting auto attacked and it's been all over.
Yeah, that is what I've heard. And then Rep Paladin, a change to one of their hero trees.
Yeah, so Rat Pally was looking very sketchy going into this tier, and they got a bug fix like 10 days ago to Herald of the Sun that actually made it. Surprise! This spec's doing a lot of damage, and this hero talent is the way that they're doing a lot of damage. So they're now actually getting a nerf to Herald of the Sun. If you looked at a lot of these heroic splits over the past few days, Rat Pallies were near the top of the meters very often. I think that naturally would already have fallen off a little bit into Mythic. Rat Pally's the kind of spec that works out really well when nobody knows what the hell they're doing with their cooldowns, right? Nobody knows what... people are dying and they're proccing wings on the Rat Pallies, all those sorts of things. So I think it would have naturally already been a little bit worse than we would have expected based on how good it looked this week in Heroic. But I think the nerf is definitely also substantial for... I would still expect to not see Rat Pallies in Mythic, but maybe one could sneak in.
Okay. Yeah, maybe they could try and fit a bop in.
It is, yeah.
somewhere.
Bop has some utility this tier. The Rat Pally utility suite is valuable for sure.
Yeah, all right, now on to something that also probably won't get played, Shadow Priest. Even though they increased the damage.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, they increased all damage and then nerfed their AoE cleave a little bit, their Psychic Link.
Yeah, so in perfect situations in AoE, this is a very minuscule nerf, but it's mostly neutral for AoE. And of course, a single target buff, right? 6% buff on single target, so that is nice. I think it probably needed more than that, and it probably needed to not get nerfed in AoE for us to see it being used here in the Race to World first, but Priest is always a little bit of a sleeper spec because, you can look at that bar of damage and it's like, oh, it's not doing much damage, but you got to remember, they are power infusing somebody, and nobody uses power infusion quite as well as a Race to World first guild does, right? Using it on the perfect person at the perfect time for some fight where you just need that little bit of extra to break some shield or something, right?
Yeah. And do you happen to know how their execute is now in War Within?
I have no clue. I think
No
they do
clue?
still have those talents, but I don't know how much of a gain they have during execute.
Okay. All right, now on to Rogue Outlaw. This one was looking very powerful. Some nerfs here.
Yeah, Outlaw was one of the other ones, sort of like Rat Pally, where it's like, oh, this spec's actually doing a lot of damage this week when we looked at the statistics, which that was a pretty fun thing we did.
Yeah, I think we'll probably revisit that now that the week is...
That sounds like a great...
cleared.
I love looking at all the stats. I think, yeah, so the little bit of nerfs coming into Outlaw. The set bonus changes are actually buffs here, which is good for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't think it needed to be purely nerfed by that much, so it's good that there's some offsetting buffs coming in. And second of all, those set bonuses were real bad. Those set bonuses were not doing very much at all for Outlaw, so it's nice to see them getting... Now they're going to be in a position where it actually feels good to put on your tier sets, which should always be true.
Yeah, awesome. All right, now Enhanced Shaman. Looking powerful, got all ability damage increased by 4%, and then some changes to... what is Witch Doctor's Ancestry? Is that one of the hero trees?
It is a regular talent, and it reduces the cooldown of your Feral Spirits whenever you gain Maelstrom weapon stacks, which is often, but it's now being nerfed in half. So instead of getting 2 seconds of cooldown reduction, you're only going to get 1 second. So this is a pretty big nerf to enhancement. Overall, even factoring in the all ability damage increased by 4%, and this 2 set getting a little bit of a buff here. This is still a high single-digit nerf to the most popular enhancement builds. Some of the builds they weren't using are actually unaffected by this, but the popular builds are nerfed by a reasonable chunk, and crucially, their 4 set interacted with Feral Spirits. It made Feral Spirits more powerful. So this nerf also reduces how good their 4 set is, because they're going to be pressing Feral Spirits less often now after this nerf. That 4 set was really good. They had the best 4 set in the game. It's still a really, really good 4 set. And the spec was already doing really well across our statistics this week when they didn't have 4 set yet, overwhelmingly, right? So I would say Enhance is still likely to be fine. I think it's still definitely an option to bring multiple of on some of these later fights. Without this nerf, there's a good chance that it would have been like giga stacked, because it was already doing good damage this week, and they were going to be getting a 20% damage increasing set bonus next week, and now that's a little bit less true.
Okay, yeah, and they always seem nice. Their damage it's like smoother.
Yeah, and
they have bursty. They
work well in kind of ad spawning situations that they're pretty happy about that, while also still doing a chunk of single target damage that is not, it's not like they only live to AoE. Generally in the Race to World First, if you're a spec that only does AoE, or if you've got talent builds that only do AoE, that's usually a non-starter, because the single target just always needs to be there, and then we also need the AoE, right? You have to have both.
Yeah, so there is a Shaman buff this time in War Within, and Enhance is for sure, I think, going to be in the raid. I'm not sure about Resto.
I think Resto's looking good too. I don't know. I mean, I feel like you could definitely play. Honestly, it's weird because it's so rare for this to be true for a raid buff, but I wouldn't be surprised if we just had one of each Shaman spec as well. Ellie's definitely the least likely of the 3 to me to be showing up. But yeah, at the end of the day, you do just need the one Shaman, so maybe there's something you want to stack more, right? Maybe you're like, okay, we really want to stack Fury Warriors. Let's cut the Enhancement Shaman and just play a Resto Shaman, and then even though Enhancement's good, maybe the Fury Warrior is 5% better, right? And so you just do that instead. But I still wouldn't be surprised to see multiple Shamans at least getting geared and them making that decision on the later bosses.
Yeah, I guess Resto is more about the damage that the bosses do to the raid and how they can fit their cooldowns if they fit well into that.
Spirit Link Totem, Windrush Totem both look really good to me this tier.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like it's been a bit since a Resto Shaman. Maybe I'm wrong.
It has been. Resto Shaman is probably one of the least common healers. It used to be Mistweaver that we would basically never see, but Mistweaver got some really good play, and in Emirgil even, they were really good for that, so.
Yeah, so much throughput.
Yeah. It's been a while, though, since we've seen the Resto Shamans really dominating.
Yeah, and our resident Warlock came in the other day, Kalamazi.
Yep.
He's in the building.
Yep.
And I think he's probably excited about these. I think he's a demo man.
Yeah, I think Demo is definitely a candidate now. If you can make it work on these fights, it probably is a good option. AF was sort of the default.
Yeah. Yeah, and they do a little Demon Bolt damage increase. I don't think that's much of your damage. Some Doomguard summon increased by 45%. It's quite a bit. And then Felguard by 15%. I think that's the big one for Demo.
Yep. It is. You can't just look at the number, right? You gotta know what percentage of your damage that number is multiplying, and the Felguard damage is definitely the biggest, coefficient there to multiply with that 15%.
Yeah. And then Destro, that's just one of these specs that they keep buffing over and over, and it's still underperforming, but it is nice to see them at least attempt to bring it up to the others.
Yeah, Destro used to always be kind of nice because it was sort of chill, and it was pretty good at movement, right? You had a lot of, conflagrates and stuff you could cast and do some movement with. This expansion, they have really clamped down on all 3 Warlock specs mobility, and it's just sort of no longer true that Destro even feels good to move on. And so I think it's probably not really got a niche that will be used on any fights this tier.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think maybe even AF's 2-target is probably better than Destro.
Yeah, exactly, which Destro, whenever your Havoc is not better than just AF multi-dotting 2 targets, that is a tremendous sad Warlock noises moment.
For sure. All right, well, let's end with maybe the most overpowered class in the game, Warrior. Yeah. Or at least Arms Warrior, very strong.
Yeah, Mountain of Muscle and Scars. That talent was named after me. They're buffing that for Colossus Warriors. And they're also buffing other Colossus and Mountain Thane things, so that looks like a lot of buffs to an already overperforming class. But all of the overperforming Warriors were playing Slayer, the 3rd hero talent tree. That's the one shared by Arms and Fury. And Arms is getting a small nerf to Bladestorm, so that affects their AoE a lot and their single target a little. And Fury is getting nerfs to that all ability damage. That was, again, one of those changes that we saw more recently. And Bladestorm, Odin's Fury, again, predominantly targeting the AoE, the single target not being affected too much, plus a little bit of a Mountain Thane buff specifically for Fury. I think we are still going to see Slayer being used even though they're trying to buff Colossus and Thane, but it's nice that they're trying to close that gap. I think that that's really good. Any of these classes where it's like one hero talent tree is 40% better than another one, I'm always so happy that they're buffing these outliers. I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, me too. I think they're doing a really good job lately, just doing these little micro increases all over the place. I'm not sure like how they're looking at all the data. Do you think they just go through logs or like
in a dartboard
the dartboard text
situation? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, well, enough about all the classes. I think we should hop into the big boss of this tier.
Okay, this is it. Yeah, this is Queen Ansurek, the end boss of the tier, the one that we are likely to be sitting here on this couch watching the most of in like a week's time on Mythic, maybe. Boy, does this boss have a lot of mechanics as well.
Yeah, I did this on normal last night.
Ooh.
It wasn't so bad. After Silken Court, that was a little rough,
yeah,
getting the webs. But yeah, Queen Ansurek, I think, is an awesome fight. A great end boss. Visually looks great. It's just a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm so excited to see Mythic.
Absolutely, yeah. So the first mechanic on this fight, kind of the core mechanic, is the Reactive Toxin / Venom Nova combo. The boss will basically pick people to drop these geysers, and then somebody can run into the middle of it and trigger that geyser, which will then knock everybody that is standing close to it and knock them up so that they can get knocked over the Venom Nova that's expanding out of the boss, which is really neat. On normal, that's pretty much all there is to it. As we get to the higher difficulties, you get these extra mechanics where you have to start balancing equally between them. I think on Mythic, the Dungeon Journal says there's going to be 5 of these reactive toxins as well, and you're going to have to stagger popping them by at least a second each. So that's going to be a very intense looking thing. On Heroic, there's just 2, but you do have to split your raid in half between the 2 of them, so that is already quite a high degree of coordination for a Heroic boss.
Do you have to stagger them in Heroic?
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
But you do have to have a different person pop the geyser each time.
Okay, I see.
You can't do it twice on Heroic or higher.
All right, I'm trying to think of how the geometry will be on Mythic, where you have to stagger them, but also still make it over the Nova.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very cool. It's a very cool effect, and it's also pretty forgiving. You don't have to stand like in any specific spot inside the circle. Anywhere you go, it'll just knock you towards the boss, which is nice.
Okay. All right, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there is a Tindral-like mechanic, the Silken Tomb. Everybody gets a little circle, and you kind of stack up and cleave each other out.
Yep, exactly the same as Tindral things, except instead of spawning trees if you break them early, which it did, I think it only did on the higher difficulties on Tindral. On Queen Ansurek, it'll spawn webs when you either kill or, freedom off one of these Silken Tombs. So, more ground denial stuff on the floor.
Okay, I didn't notice that. Maybe that's Heroic.
It might be a Heroic mechanic, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then there's the intermission. Is this time or health-based that she goes in?
It is at least time-based. I suspect it also probably has a health floor below which if you push, she'll go into the intermission, but I think that for progression, we're going to be seeing this as a time-based intermission.
Okay, yeah, and this is the boss goes to the middle, kind of becomes... No, actually, does she become immune?
She puts a big shield on herself, and you have to break the shield to stop the intermission.
Okay, yeah, and then there's a bunch of waves that come out, and then the players every once in a while get gripped into her. Yeah. You don't want to get eaten, and you also don't want to get gripped through a wave. I thought that was fun.
It's definitely fun, yeah, and then Heroic starts adding some more to it as well. You start pulsing damage if you get too close to somebody else, so...
Oh, really?
You need to kind of be doing a little bit of spread. I mean, it's not too much damage, so it's better than getting eaten, but... it is a nasty intermission, and then you go into phase 2, which it kind of feels intermission-y because you're sort of fighting a bunch of ads, but it's definitely its own phase. It's got its own set of interesting mechanics as you kind of climb and pursue Ansurek.
Yeah, and this starts, it gave me flashbacks to LFR Razageth.
Yep.
You got the
knockbacks.
Knockback on each side, so I hope everybody can remember that from last time, so I'm not on that boss forever on my alts.
I can't wait to see how they do this on LFR, yeah, because I always remember the first pull of LFR Razageth, just everybody going off the edge, and then the second pull you make it to the push, and then everybody's going and getting knocked off the edge again.
Yeah. But yeah, you're climbing like up these webs, up these platforms, and opening these bridges, and there's different ads on each one. The first one is one that does like a beam, and I can't remember what the other guy does. I know you just tank him.
Doesn't do too much, yeah. It does a little knockback on the tank and beats up your tank a little bit, but nothing else.
Okay, and then the next set, there's some spiders that come out while you're going up the web, to AoE those down, and then a mob with like 1 HP and a big shield that you just want to break the shield, it dies. And there was another big ad there. I forget if it was
It's the
another
beam one
guy.
again, yeah.
Okay. And then you go to the final platform, get a little more spiders along the way, and then another ad, which I think is just the same as the one that knocks you to the platform to begin with. Kill it, it drops an orb, you get knocked into P3, and yeah, big DPS check at the end. Not so much on normal.
Yeah.
I imagine on Mythic, it's going to be a huge check.
Yeah, again, you've got some ground denial mechanics, and there are some. It's sort of a void twist on the phase 1 mechanics. On heroic, it does get very hectic as the overlaps become nastier and nastier as you spend longer in that phase. So the first 90 seconds not too bad. The last 90 seconds of that phase there's some mechanics that are completely criminal put in there. I can't wait to see having to do them on Mythic, but. One of the cores is there. You remember how phase 1 has the Venom Nova that goes out from the boss? Mm-hmm. Phase 3 has a Void Nova that she pulls in from the edges of the room, and you need to dodge it in a different way, which is using these portals that get dropped by 2 players that are marked with Abyssal Infusion. So you get those portals, and then you run in and you get over the Nova while the boss is trying to grip you into the middle and off of the platform, because the phase 3 platform has a hole in the middle of the room. So got to watch out for that. You want to try really hard to not fall into that.
Stay out of the hole.
Yeah.
All right, well, this can be kind of hard to visualize, just looking at these graphics and stuff, but thank you, Wowhead. But we do actually have a video guide because the guild won't show us Ansurek, so you had to go out there and do some work yourself.
That's right, yeah. We've had 7 really high-quality liquid guides for the past 7 bosses. That one is not available yet for Queen Ansurek, so you are going to have to suffer through 20 minutes of me showing you my guild's kill in that fight. So my apologies in advance, but sorry about the brain cell loss you're about to experience. This is the best that we could do for heroic Ansurek current footage. I'm sure we'll have the liquid guide soon that'll be better.
No, I think this will be good. It'll be good and thorough.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys...
Everybody let me know what you think afterwards, because I had a lot of fun trying to make this thing, yeah.
Yeah, all right, good. Well, we'll have some fun watching it. Check out Dratnos' guide.
Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos and welcome to my guide to Heroic Queen Ansurek. So I'm going to assume a little bit of knowledge, not too much. I'll try and explain really everything about this fight even if you haven't done normal. So first thing that happens on this is a sort of combination tank and everybody mechanic where the boss is going to cast Liquefy. Now Liquefy does a big hit to the active tank. It also puts a debuff on them that makes them take 200% increased physical damage on this difficulty. And then also it makes a big green puddle under the boss, and also it shoots out a bunch of green swirlies at the raid. So what we wanted to do for this was kind of try and have everybody be nice and stacked up, and then we could move as a group. And this entire phase, we're going to move around the room in a clockwise fashion. That's the idea we're going for here. This is also a tank swap that you're going to want to do because your tank is taking 200% increased physical damage. So here I taunt. Now the thing is, right after this, it's going to do Feast. Feast is another tank mechanic, and this one does a big hit of physical damage right up front, and it leaves behind a massive healing absorb that is based on the unmitigated damage that it deals. So it's a good idea to fire off some mitigation on this one. This first one of the fight, there's not really much else going on, so if your healers are aware of it and have a way on their UI to show how much of a healing absorb you have, which I actually don't have a good one here on my UI for how much is on me, then that can help a lot. And stuff like Vamp Blood, Frenzied Regen, any sort of self-healing increases you can have on yourself are quite valuable for handling this as well. So you see I got a big lay on hands here, and pretty quickly it is over. Okay, next set of mechanics overlapping now. So right at the start of the fight, quite a lot happening here. We have 2 people afflicted with Reactive Toxin. These are these green circles here. And the boss is also shooting out a bunch of web blades. The web blades just choose a person, and then it creates these 3 lines of webs that will be soon cutting in towards that point. That does a bunch of damage if you get hit, and it slows you, so that's a dodge. The Reactive Toxin is pretty annoying as well, because it'll start pulsing damage to anybody inside that circle real quick, which means you kind of want to be pre-spread a little bit for this. And you're going to want to drop 1 Reactive Toxin or 2 Reactive Toxins in somewhat pre-planned positions. What we did is we had our ranged play towards the middle of the room, and our melee would play on the boss. And we would do 1 puddle would go behind the boss in the middle of the room, and 1 would go behind the boss but towards the edge of the room. And so you can see our people moving with those now, kind of trying to identify which person is going to be as closer to the edge. They go drop one there. And then after a couple of seconds, the things that they drop turn into these geysers that you can run into. And if you run into one, they'll knock you up in the air. Now that's important because the boss is about to cast Venom Nova here, which is going to come out and be basically a big old one-shot Nova you can live it, but you really don't want to. So what you need to do is you need to use this to get knocked over the Venom Nova. Now that's simple enough, but on Heroic, you need to split your group evenly between the two circles. So you can't just YOLO this. You want to have 15 people and 15 if you're doing a 30-person team, just evenly split between the two. So you have a group assigned for each. That's part of why we're doing melee and ranged. And what you can do is just count how many melee you have, count how many ranged you have. If you're a little bit over on one or the other, you just assign some Aug Evokers to count as melee, or you assign some Survival Hunters to count as ranged or whatever, and go in that stack. Instead, some melee healers to count as ranged, or ranged healers to count as melee, whatever makes the groups even. Because when this gets hit and gets activated, everybody in the raid is going to get a stack of Frothy Toxin. But if you don't have balanced groups, you will get more than 2 total stacks of Frothy Toxin. With our level of gear, which I should have mentioned at the top of this is a week 1 kill. If you're watching this further down the line, your gear is going to be a lot better than ours. Your damage is going to be better than ours. You're not going to need as much finesse. But even still, we can live 2 stacks. That's the normal amount. We can live 3. We can live 4 with defensives. You can't really live much more than that. So if your groups are unbalanced even a little bit, or if people die, then it counts as unbalanced as well. So what you really want to do is land some B-reses quickly if somebody goes down in phase 1, so that they can keep soaking these with you and reducing the damage. And what that also means is that you can't try any fancy tricks like blinking the Venom Nova or transcendencing it, any of that stuff. All of that is going to maybe save you, but it's going to mean that there are going to be extra Frothy Toxin stacks going out on the raid, and that's a catastrophe. So Venom Nova comes out, and what you want to do is you want to assign people to trigger the geyser. So let's look at this again. We have the geyser coming out, and you stand inside this bigger circle to be getting knocked by it, and then somebody runs in and taps the middle to actually trigger that knock on everybody that is inside the bigger circle. You want to do this earlier than you would guess, basically. So here, for instance, we're pretty close to where the boss is. Somewhere between 1 and 2 seconds left on the cast is an appropriate time to knock here. You are airborne for about 2 seconds off of that knock. And you really want to, usually, I think people's instincts are a little bit, you should basically do it as soon as you think you maybe should, and don't wait too long. The 2 people who do the triggering will then get these big green circles around them. So what we do is we have those people run out, and everybody else kind of gets to stand still as much as possible. And those people, once that green circle expires, they now can't trigger geysers for the rest of the phase. So you're going to need 3 sets of 2 people to do the actual geyser triggering job. Now, right after this, we've got the location that those geysers were triggered, shoots out these toxic waves that you need to dodge, and then we're going to have our whole group kind of try and get back behind where the boss is so that we can now spawn our liquefy puddles. We do a pretty bad job of it here. We get some liquefy ahead of the group, but once again, we do now the tank combo. Once again, I take the liquefy this time, my co-tank takes the feast, and he is now lay on handsing himself and healing himself to avoid that. Now here comes the roots. So this is it's like on Tindril. It's called Silken Tomb. It puts a root on everybody and it damages people close to you, so you don't really want to stack too much for this. You can break these with Freedom, you can break them with Disengage, you can immune them with AMS, you can do all kinds of stuff to those, but if you don't, you just need to kill the root that gets left behind. After you break it, you will leave behind Webby Ground, which is something that you basically try not to stack in the group and then insta-break yourself. If you're going to break yourself, do it outside of the group so that you're not going to leave Webby Ground underneath people. Next, Venom Nova comes out. Again, same story here. We get knocked over these and dodge a little bit forward. Another Liquefy combo is going to come out. And at this point, we've finally seen all the mechanics of this phase. So it's a pretty mechanic-intensive P1 for a heroic boss. Once again, you can see big healing absorb on me. You actually can't see, but it's a lot. It's like 30 million, 40 million healing. It's a huge healing absorb. Somebody dies, again, very quick. Try to get the reses out quickly. And yeah, you can see sometimes tombs get left, and that's pretty bad because you want to make sure that somebody's not going to just get left behind and then be unable to soak, get killed, that kind of thing. So do look around and kill any tombs that are left behind. We get another set of these reactive toxins, and we're nearing the end of our phase at this point. Here comes a nasty dodge. You really want to make sure during this dodge that you don't end up accidentally griefing yourself and running into a geyser or getting too far away so that you won't be able to make it to your geyser. You can see here we got 3 stacks instead of the 2 of that because somebody missed their soak. Again, livable, but not ideal. So now the first intermission begins. In the first intermission, you just want to avoid getting gripped into the boss. Now on Heroic, anytime you're standing near anybody else, you're also going to pulse damage onto each other. That's that little circle around you. And there's also these waves you want to dodge, but it's a pretty simple phase. You're slowly getting slowed over time, and more damage over time is ramping on you from this poison as well. Death Event's really good for this phase, as you can see from me here. There's what happens if somebody gets gripped in the middle. They just get devoured by the boss, so try not to have that happen. We used Wind Rushes and Stampeding Roars to try and be able to get away from the boss a little bit more. And our goal was to beat this third pull-in that you can see getting cast here. As soon as that's done, we now have to split our group towards the 2 sides here. Now the way this phase works, this is phase 2, is all of the ads on each side basically share health with the other side's version of it. So this ad actually shares health with the one that's over on the other side, which I think is actually a pretty cool design. So here, the big thing that's different about Heroic is that people will be getting targeted by those swirlies. Let's just look back a little bit at this. There will be swirlies that will aim at people. Here you can see one, and that shoots out these orbs. Those orbs do a lot of damage. Like if you watch these health bars here, anytime somebody gets hit by one, it's like 60% of their health. Obviously that's going to be less as you have more gear later on, but yeah, dodging those is very important. One thing that's worth noting is that on this platform and on the second platform of the Ascent, that mechanic exists. And if you push out of the platform, like if you kill the associated ad, any currently about to spawn circles won't spawn, which will be nice. Okay, so here now we have 2 ads. We have the Guardian, which your melee should hit, and we pull this towards the far edge of this platform because the boss is about to grip everybody towards the close edge of the platform. And so we don't want to be over there because then we'll get gripped off the platform instead of to that side of the platform. And your range should focus mostly the Expeller. Your melee should focus mostly the Guardian, although if your damage is not equal, you may need to separate that a little bit. Now you activate this bridge. Once you activate the bridge, any pull-in that's about to happen won't happen. You want to make sure that you have your tank grab all these skitterers. They do slowly stack a increased damage taken effect with every successful auto, so you do want to be careful of that getting too scary. And you need to make sure you get to and kill that ad on this platform before it finishes that cast, or else it will be a wipe as well. So a little bit of a timer effect here. But you can see we're all about to get pulled in, but as soon as we kill that ad, that actually cancels that pull-in that was about to happen, and we can head up to the final platform. Watch out for threat on these. You can see everybody running up ahead of their slow DK, getting hit a little bit, a couple of stacks on some people from those ads. Do be careful. And now on this platform, again, we have those swirly balls to dodge. There is also a dispel mechanic, I believe, on the second platform. That's a magic dispel that you want to stagger the dispels because it does a bunch of damage when you dispel it. I don't know, it's a healer thing. I don't even track it on my bars. I didn't even know it existed until 20 pulls in or something on this, so you take that with for what you will. But there's some healer stuff on this fight too. Sorry, I don't talk too much about the healer specific things because that's nothing to do with me. All right, so we're into the last phase now, phase 3. Now the boss will always spawn. She'll always jump out towards where she's facing. So you can actually see on her hitbox here. If you ever get dizzy, you don't know where she's going to be, look for that little arrow on her hitbox. As soon as she finishes this cast, she jumps out and starts the phase over here. There's a threat drop here as well. You can see likes to auto attack somebody that's not you. So make sure you taunt at some point during this to prevent that happening. First mechanic here is Infest. This targets the tank, deals a bunch of damage to them, and also causes them to then spawn these ads and do a bunch of damage around them. Meanwhile, she's going to beat up the other tank with Gorge, which is a 6-hit combo, one with each of her legs, I guess, and that leaves behind a massive physical damage taken increase. So your other tank needs to get back quickly and deal that. Okay, you get the taunt back off, basically. Now, those ads that we spawn from this mechanic, the Infest, are going to try and reach the boss. If they do reach the boss, it's bad. It will kill you. So kill them all off, over, far away, Vortex, Ring of Peace, Binding Shot, all really good. You'll also note here that our ranged are all standing over in a specific spot. We want to do this because during this phase, the boss will cast these pools on people, and they'll always only be on ranged, and we want to leave those kind of in a specific spot, and then again, we're moving in a clockwise direction this whole phase. Same with these spiderlings. When they die, they will also leave behind pools, so you want to, I guess, mostly those pools we're trying to keep behind us as we're moving around the room. Now, Royal Condemnation is going to target 2 people, and this is going to do a boatload of fall-off damage, but it's not an unsurvivable amount of fall-off damage, and it's going to leave behind ads that we're going to want to kill. So what we do is we take these 2 and we put them near the boss, and the 2 targets here are going to want to either use externals or defensives on themselves to avoid getting killed by this initial hit of damage. As you can see, like Dippin' Shots here and Pig, our 2 hunters, end up taking quite a bit of damage out of this, but they do have defensives rolling. And then the rest of the raid, especially the melee, because it's fall-off damage, are going to also take quite a bit of damage from this initial hit, but it's not going to one-shot anybody. And what that lets us do then is now we have 2 shackles that are nice and stacked up, so we can just drop move the boss right on top of them and kill them. The shackles are going to slowly ramp up a grip on you. You're going to be taking some damage, and you're going to be getting sloweder and sloweder. And if you ever actually get gripped into a shackle, you're going to get stunned, which is not good. You really want to try and avoid that. So we kill off the shackles as quick as we can and continue with our day. So now here comes Abyssal Infusion. 2 people are going to be targeted, and it's a pretty big circle around them that will instantly start pulsing damage. So a nice pre-spread here is good if you can have it. You can see we didn't have a particularly good pre-spread, and we used Link here to avoid anybody getting killed. That's, I guess, another option for this maybe, but I feel like a good pre-spread is probably the better way to handle this. And what you want to do is have 1 person head to the inside of the room and 1 person head to the outside of the room, kind of just ahead of where we've left all of our puddles, where we've denied all of our space. And these are going to then shoot out some orbs on Heroic and then create these portals. Now the boss casts Frothing Gluttony. She's going to jump to the middle of the room and do a little bit of a pull on you. It's not a super strong pull, but it does slightly pull you towards the middle. And what you need to do is take the portal. That will take you out over this ring without getting killed. And then everybody is going to get a Abyssal Reverberation, which is going to do some AoE damage around them. So what you want to do is then spread out after that. The boss will jump back down onto wherever your tank is, and the portals will now explode and leave behind again more gunk. So that's why we want to put them as far back towards our pre-existing polluted space as possible. Another Infest Gorge combo comes out. Again, tank swap and then a tank reswap here. Another set of shackles comes out here, and so you see we use our AMZ there to help keep those 2 people alive. And we're just going to kill off these shackles and these hatchlings again as well. And now we get our first big ads of the fight. So the queen is going to summon 3 spiders in the 3 closest corners of this hexagon to you. And these spiders are going to come up at 60% health with a shield equal to 40% of their max health. So basically they start at 100% health, but the first 40% is a shield rather than full health. So get owned, hunters. And it is going to then be that they have an uninterruptible cast called Null Detonation, but it's interruptible once you break the shield. Now you can see we let all 3 of these initial casts go off, and it's not the end of the world. It's fine. But you do want to kick them before they get too many of these casts and start ramping it up too much. So you want to be able to kind of spread your damage out. What we did is we had our ranged focus on the ones that were behind in the gunk, and our melee worked on these front ones. Ultimately, we probably could have had this boss further forward, and the backmost one didn't even necessarily need to be in the gunk. But we were playing a little bit more conservatively with space than we probably needed to. We finished this fight with... you're going to run out of time in the fight before you run out of space, almost certainly. So I think you probably take some bigger moves here and have the spiders not be in the gunk, because when the spiders die, each of them is going to then spawn one of these Acolyte's Essences. Now, this Acolyte's Essence is very important. It needs to be carefully guarded, and basically what happens is if you pick it up, you then get a dot, and you can see on Dippin' Shots here, it's quite a nasty dot. On me, I'm a tank, so it doesn't matter. But what you have to do is Acolyte's Essence can't get hit. So if you leave it on the ground, or if the person who's carrying it gets hit by this enclosing ring, it's a catastrophe, it wipes your raid pretty much. So what you need to do is you need to take it through the portal. But taking it through the portal does cause the portal to instantly start destabilizing, rather than waiting for another 5 or 10 seconds after the ring closes. That doesn't really matter too much. You still have more than enough time for everybody to take this portal, but it does mean that you're going to have to dodge the circles that it shoots out a little bit sooner here. So you can see we all take this. The thing starts destabilizing now, and it destabilizes the portal, so we don't even have to deal with the circles. So it removes that part of that mechanic entirely. I was mistaken there, but it does mean that you need to all take the portal before it goes away and get out of that circle. Here I was running for a B-res, which we were able to get anyways. And then coming back, we have some web blades again from earlier in the fight. And at this point, the fight is now going to start to get sketchy. Here's where you sort of hope the boss is low enough that you can just commit to the boss, because now we have web blades again. So more dodging the web blades. We have more of those ads to kill off here. You see I taunted back here because I'm stupid. Shouldn't have done that because I've got the huge 6 stacks of physical damage taken increase. But I saw the boss running towards the spiders and I panicked. Then we have another set of big ads here. The boss is at 8%. And so what you can do at this point, what we did is we're like, okay, let's just commit to the boss. What you should do, I think, if you're not going to commit boss, is take these 2 royal condemnations and bring them up over the ad, or near the ad, so you can cleave them all. You can cleave the big ads with the shackles. But man, this fight is if you don't have the damage to kill the boss by this point, this is a super nasty overlap. Like, look at what's going to happen right now. So now everybody's getting gripped. We have 3 ads we need to kill. We need to kill them. Then we need people to grab the essences that they drop. Maybe you could save your 2 tanks to do it in this set rather than the first set, and they can live a little bit more easily. Now we have to drop our portals as well, because we're going to have a ring that is going to need to get dodged soon using those portals. But wait, before that happens, we are going to get, I guess, yeah, here is the ring now coming in, and there's web blades during this ring as well. All the more stuff that could kill you. So yeah, basically it's sketchy. If you don't kill the boss by this point, it's very bad. But you know, kill the boss. Just commit boss at that point. That's probably the play from there. That's it. That's Heroic Queen Ansurek. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it helped with your guild sprog, or I don't know if you sent this to some pugs or something before trying this fight. Good luck. Good luck out there. Thanks for watching. Remember to hit the thumbs up or something, like the video. I don't know, subscribe. If you got a free Twitch Prime, throw it to my Twitch channel. I never stream, I'm sorry. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dratnos, for that video. As you can see here, we've got a dog on the couch, and we're joined by the other half of the Dream Team, Teddles.
Yo, what up? We're back.
And we're back. How you feeling about this raid so far?
Raid's been pretty interesting. I think that people were like not super hyped whenever the raid was initially being shown on the PTR, right? During PTR testing, I thought that some people had some pretty negative sentiments towards the raid just as a whole. But I think that as the raid has played out, I thought that Heroic has actually been quite fun to play. I think some of the later bosses are going to provide a very interesting challenge for the teams. I think it's feeling very similar to like Vault of the Incarnates in terms of difficulty.
Yeah, I do think that there's sort of a question mark about Kaiveza and Ovanax, the 5th and 6th bosses of the raid. Which of those is going to be hard and which of those will be easy? But definitely the first 4, I think everybody would be shocked if there was any difficulty in those.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about some of the predictions for the poll counts. I guess I'll start. I'm going to say the first 4 bosses go down 1 poll. Maybe there's just a fluke wipe somewhere in there on one of them.
So what are the first 4 bosses? It's Olgarax, right?
Yeah, Olgarax. If Olgarax isn't a one-shot, I'll eat my socks.
Yeah, I think Olgarax is 100% one-shot. Was it this?
It's Bloodbound Horror.
Bloodbound Horror. I was about to call it Destroy Horror. Yeah, Bloodbound Horror. That mythic mechanic of that fight is pretty easy.
Yeah, that fight will be hard. Not because of the mythic mechanic, but if they just ramp up the numbers, ramp up the number of ads that spawn, that kind of thing.
Sure, yeah, because what is the mythic mechanic actually? It's like something with the ads. It has like a spread.
The upstairs group has a spread.
Oh yeah,
and that's it. That does a little bit extra damage and it makes you spread a little bit.
Sickran. I thought that Sickran during testing was quite easy. Basically, the cadence for the demolish for killing the ads is a bit more frequent, and then you get a few more ads, but I don't feel like that one's like a one that a Race World First Guild almost always one-shots.
The primary mythic mechanic on that fight is that you can't have 2 ads within 5 yards of each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not going to be hard for them to deal with, I don't think. Again, I would guess 1 to 3 pulls on that.
In Rashanan, did you guys kill Rashanan in...
I think we did on testing, yeah.
Yeah, we killed it during testing too, so I think that all those bosses are probably one-shot bosses.
Yeah, that's one thing. Rashanan, it's just 3 waves, and then...
Yeah, there's some web tether break stuff.
You get ads slightly more often.
I mean,
too.
It's one of those things where maybe during testing it didn't feel impactful because the numbers were tuned low and they're going to be tuned back up for next time, so we'll have to see.
Okay, yeah, and then we get into the meat of the raid. Ovanax and Kaiveza they can choose. I think everybody's kind of assuming they're going to go Ovanax first.
Yeah.
Put that maybe around 20, 30 pulls probably.
So Ovanax is like a weak or a boss. I could actually see Ovanax being relatively quick. So the main mythic mechanic for Ovanax is that you have to have 2 people with the circles per egg that you're breaking.
Okay.
Initially, that mechanic was private aura'd, right? But then they removed the private aura tag off of it. I don't know. Are you thinking that's going to be a 20-pull boss? Because I feel like this is just like a boss that pre-preparation for how you're going to be pulling it, who's going to be breaking what egg. I feel like that goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that which eggs are where are going to be consistent from Mythic testing to when it comes out as well. So they'll have done a lot of thinking about the order they want to break them in. There is some more Mythic mechanic on that fight as well, where each of the 3 sections of the room empowers permanently the type of ad that is associated with that section of the room.
Yeah.
Which does mean that, that adds a lot of extra health and a lot of extra damage to the fight. It might, I think it's probably going to be easier than Kaiveza. I suspect it won't end up being a wall boss, but I do think the possibility is not zero that might happen.
I could see it being like 5, 6, 7 pulls. You guys remember?
Really?
I mean,
it's pretty late in the raid. I mean, it's in the second half of the raid.
you guys remember Drestagath though? I mean, this fight feels
That
very
was,
similar to
17,
Drestagath. Yeah.
I think.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, also, they did kill Drestagath largely by accident. It was
I feel like you could kill this boss by accident.
That's true. Yeah, I do think that is a possibility. But, I mean, you need to have everybody alive and doing the eggs well the whole way through.
This might age poorly if the boss is like, if the ads are like insanely hard or something like that. I feel like this could
I
age
do think
poorly.
that a good guess is that it'll be probably in the low double-digit pull count, but I would say there is a long tail on that. It might be in the 100 pull range.
Oh god,
Ooh.
it would have to be. There was a lot of tuning that would have to happen for it to be 100.
I would guess there's at least like a 20% chance it's at least 50 pulls.
Okay. All right, now on to Kaiveza, the kind of DPS check looking fight of the raid.
It is the only single target encounter of these last 4, so...
I mean, Cams, what do you think about single target encounters? I feel like single target encounters are always so hit or miss for Race to World First guilds.
Yeah, I always like them going in, like when you see Sludgefish or something. That's the boss I'm most excited to see. But yeah, if they miss the tuning, then it's just kind of like the
Yeah, then it's
easiest.
Guardian of the first ones, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like it. I mean, what were some of the most? So Smolderon was Amir Drasil.
Yep.
What do we have in?
Rashok and
Magmarax
were the 2 in Aberrus, which Rashok was great, but was a little early in the tier to be really testing. And then Magmarax was actually kind of sleeper difficult. I feel like every single guild that ever pulled Magmarax always felt like they were, wiping to stupid stuff, but they always would wipe more than they were supposed to on the...
Every guild
that
killed
boss.
it at like 15 to 20 pulls, but every guild felt like they should have killed it at pull 10.
If you look at the stats on it, most guilds are in the 40-50 range even, yeah.
Interesting. I feel like a lot of the Hall of Fame guilds rather were at that.
No, even them. Like it's one of those ones where you feel like it should be a 15 pull boss, and then every guild is taking 40. You just always feel like, oh, we should have been killing this 20 pulls ago, but it's hard.
So yeah, I think that Nexus Princess has very interesting mechanics. I think that like the mythic mechanic having to dash the ad through the boss. I think that, but ultimately it kind of comes down to how well is that DPS check tuned.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a big thing. Also, how many healers do you have to bring to that boss? Because the healing ramps up over time. But as we know, Race to World First guilds, they're really apt to drop a healer if they need to meet a damage check. So I think that that's like a really good candidate to, all right, we only need a 3 heal this fight.
It is rare to see the healers getting dropped in the first tier of an expansion, but I do think you're right that this could be... I mean, there's so much passive damage on that fight as well.
Yeah.
One of the sleeper difficult mechanics on that fight as well is that if you ever drop below 10% health, the boss will just murder you, which makes that healing even a little bit more important. You have a little bit less of a runway before you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Kaiveza, I guess. Pretty simple. I mean, hopefully it's tuned very well. I think we said before, like... It kind of only be a letdown. It's already like a really great fight, so it can only come in under and be a little disappointing.
It's definitely a boss that's going to live or die on its tuning, right? How well we remember it is going to be based on that. And one of the nice things about this tier is that it can be tuned to be really tough for the Race to World First. And over time, we actually are all going to get a stacking buff in this raid that Nexus Princess in particular is going to get a lot easier as we get that extra damage, that extra... I think it's extra healing done or health or something that we get as well.
I think it's HP, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to make this fight a lot easier for, the mere mortals doing it in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
A couple months.
Yeah, and on to Silken Court. This pull count seems like it could be anywhere from like 20 to 400.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Silken Court starts, I would describe it as 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I think that this one is a wipe, like an encounter that you can accrue a lot of wipes on rather quickly, because the first 45 seconds of that encounter. Did you guys make it past 45 seconds?
Nope.
Testing?
We wiped
We didn't
the
either.
first 45 seconds that mechanic or that boss over and over again. Basically, you
Yes.
imagine the most messed up Mythic mechanic you could think of, and that's what they put on Silicon Court. You have your raid splits into 2 teams of 10 at the start of the fight, and they get marked either with Rage or Paranoia, either red or purple, I think. And then for the rest of the fight, if you ever touch somebody with the opposite marker as you die.
Yep.
You're both dead. It's a catastrophe. But every time you take raid damage, everybody drops a little moat. 15 seconds later, you die unless somebody of the other color comes and soaks it. So you need to have your 2 groups kind of rotating around like Sire P3, going to where the other group dropped stuff, while all of the Silken Court mechanics, which we know from Heroic, those mechanics are hard to deal with without any of this nonsense, are also going on. It's, I think, brutally murdered every single guild that streamed testing that fight did. But I think it's going to be definitely a candidate for Race to World first level preparation of the movement. Will go a long way towards making that go from impossible to possible.
I think that that's also a fight candidate where guilds or teams that like ours that were, whenever we were testing that fight, once we see what is the strat from like the Race to World first guilds, you copy that to a T and the fight becomes a lot easier. Whereas trying to YOLO it is not really advised.
Yeah, the YOLO strategy of raid testing does not get you very far on that one.
But I think that that's a fight too that they also could have changed a bunch on. They did retest that fight a couple of times.
So they retested it and they didn't change much.
Yeah.
It was like they did a retest and it was like still absolutely brutal. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up coming out for that
They
fight.
can move fight timings around too to also change some of the difficulty of where that fight stands.
Yeah.
Because like I think that first charge from that big beetle guy, that was by far the hardest part during the testing.
Because that was the first overlap that we got to, and then we didn't get past it and see what comes next. The next part could be even harder.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that one. Like Overnax, you're right. You probably could like really strat out every single movement, and maybe they've like they'll do like raid run through stuff tonight, I think, where they just go in there and like practice pull the bosses and talk about their strats. And so yeah, I can see that helping a lot, but also if it's just chaos or the tuning or anything's changed from testing, then they'll be in the dark.
You guys remember Broodkeeper? I think that Broodkeeper is also a really good example of this, because like whenever they were testing Broodkeeper, they kind of talked about how long they saw during PTR testing, what eggs spawned when. And I think it's one of these situations where, depending on how long Liquid got into testing, they might have better timers and better strats for what to see in the future as well. And so that might start them off better than most other guilds. But I do think that this is an easy one to rack up a lot of wipes on.
Yeah.
Personally, I think that we're going to be reaching like 200 wipes on this fight, but
I feel like that's the median guess from people that I've heard talk about this fight. Yeah, it's there's a lot of hype around this one being, because that raid testing that everybody did raid testing was so difficult. Everybody's thinking, okay, we're into these hundreds of pulls again. Which, when we think about penultimate bosses, Tindral was a bit of an outlier here, but it's pretty rare for them to get to that 200 pull count. Like usually, think about Echo of Neltharion, Broodkeeper. Like we're talking 100-ish pulls being sort of average for this slot in the raid.
Yeah,
well, I think it's one of those situations too where it's like the type of fight that helps you rack up a bunch of wipes on accident is like, it's P1 wipes. It's, we're wiping 1 minute, 2 minutes into the fight. It's like remember Jailer first set of bombs, you just like always wipe there.
Yeah, exactly. I think we move on to Queen Ansurek, the end boss. Not much is known on Mythic other than, like you said earlier, there will be 5 of the puddles that you use to jump over the waves. And that's kind of all I know that is there on Mythic. But yeah, always difficult on the Mythic fights. I don't know what else to say about it other than to guess a pull count.
I mean, it's hard on Heroic in Phase 1 as well. I would say that Phase 1 of Heroic is by far the hardest part. And so I think that that's probably going to make it a little bit more difficult as well just for Mythic. I kind of expect Phase 1 to also be the difficult part for Mythic.
Yeah, I suspect that Phase 1 is going to be the nastiest part. So you remember those geysers that you have to jump into?
Mm-hmm.
There's 5 of them on Mythic. At least if the last time I read the Dungeon Journal is accurate, which Mythic end bosses tend to have information that doesn't go in the Dungeon Journal about how they're difficult. That's one of the things we don't test those on Mythic. The Dungeon Journal lies and deceives you on that fight as well, especially in the later phases. But it looks like there's going to be 5 reactive toxins, and they also need to be staggered so that you don't activate them within like a second of each other. So that could be a fun little mechanic.
I'm kind of interested in seeing what that does with the raid comp too, because melee, dude, this raid looks like Melee Kingdom, straight up. This raid looks really good for a lot of melee. Having to get off the boss to do the reactive toxin, though, doesn't sound spectacular.
You could do 2 melee ones because you're in the air for 2 seconds, so you could do 2 in melee and then just activate one first and the other second and still be fine. But yeah, you're right. That is potentially something that would put a ceiling on how many melee you'd want to play on that kind of encounter.
Ranged also does just seem kind of bad, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about what specs line up best on Heroic Ansurek, I mean, it's Fury Warrior by a mile right now,
100%.
which... but then Enhancement Shaman's also looking good. Arcane Mage is looking really good. A couple other specs, certainly candidates for it too. So
I think Sub Rogue is also actually good at that fight.
I would be surprised to see more than one rogue being used with the current tuning, but yeah.
Okay, so I will say also, Paladin is very good for the tank debuff on that fight because you can actually clear the tank debuff with Bop.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a chance that we could see double Paladin on that fight as well.
Yeah, Rep Pallies help. You could play Prop Pally, but I think that's pretty unlikely. So I do think it's mostly like either maybe a second Holy Paladin or a Rep Paladin comes in and starts providing bops for your tanks. It's a possibility.
Okay, yeah. I guess for this fight, we took poll predictions earlier. I can't remember my official guess. Maybe around the 250, 280. But
I just typed
because
some
it wasn't
numbers.
tested.
Yeah, I put in some numbers at random. We'll see. We'll all find out together what my prediction was on this fight. I feel like it was actually under 200 because I was thinking, okay, if Silken Court is really hard, and if they have to do a lot of splits to get a lot of gear to kill Silken Court, and if they're on Silken Court this week, and it gets to the next reset, then even if Ansurek is hard, maybe that's going to reduce the pull count on it. And anytime you have like a second to last boss that starts going over 200 pulls, that sort of starts to take away pulls from the last boss. We saw that with Sire Denathrius, where it's like, yeah, Denathrius is really hard. Maybe it's killable week 1. But nobody actually has more than a day to prog it on week 1 because we were all busy with Stone Legion Generals for so long, so that we now have week 2 gear when we're actually fighting Sire Denathrius, and that means that the boss has gone from being like nuclear difficulty to more of Sarkareth level difficulty, where it's hard but not unfair feeling.
I felt like Ansurek just in general feels similar to Razageth. I don't know if you feel the same way, where it's got like a couple of novel mechanics. You go to these platforms, you fight the generals, then you go back into the phase 3. You're jumping from platform to platform and fighting the boss. It felt very similar to Razageth in just the flow. I don't know if it's going to feel similar to it in terms of progression, because there was some weird stuff with Raz Prog where the ads were unkillable and they had like 100% too much HP or whatever it was.
Yeah, hopefully the tuning, we don't have any Race Star World First needing to nerf a phase and half type problems this time around. That was definitely an unfortunate part of Raz Prog. I agree with you that there are certainly some similarities. It's kind of like Raz.
Feels similar.
Except Raz had 2 intermissions and 3 phases, and this has like 1 intermission and then a phase that sort of feels like an intermission. So maybe you kind of combine those two, and it's like kind of just 2 main phases and 1 sort of travel phase, and it's sort of like Razageth, but with the last 5 minutes cut off of it.
I like the novel mechanic of the activating the froth and jumping over the ring. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. What was your kill time about?
9 minutes or so, I think, on Heroic was the kill times we were having. Yeah.
What's the enrage on that fight?
I don't know. I don't know how you get past the part that we would either kill it or wipe it at. So I'm not sure what happens when the boss actually decides to berserk or anything, but I imagine it's not pretty.
No. And I do actually have some max poll predictions. I think you did them on stream.
Yeah.
So I'll just go through those. You've got Olgrax 1, Bloodbound Horror 1, Zikron 1, Roshanon 1.
These are going to be good. If any of those end up being more than 1, these are going to be good to meme him with.
Game over.
Imagine one of them's like 10 or something.
Imagine if there's like a 30 pull boss. Imagine if Zikron is just nuclear difficulty somehow, and there's 30 pulls on it, and we get to run that clip of him guessing it's going to be a one-shot.
Yeah, that reminds me of Tindril. I think he came way under. He was giving all the casters grief about our poll predictions on Tindril. He's like, we'll kill that in like 20 polls. Yeah. It'll be easy. And then, yeah.
What was the mid sod boss that was like randomly?
Aim Smith.
No. The one before that was like randomly 50 polls. Everybody thought it was gonna be easy.
In Sanctum, there was Soul Render and there was Remnant in Nerzul.
Yeah, Soul Render.
Plainsmith was the one that missed the pull counts by the most in that. The Plainsmith was over 100 pulls, I think.
But I think the Soul Render, nobody thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, Soul Render was surprisingly hard, especially for being so early in the tier.
Yeah.
Could be sicker end.
Could be. Yeah, that could be the sicker end of this tier. So we'll see.
Yeah. Hopefully, I like when there's some random difficulty in there. It's not all at the end.
With the level that Liquid are playing at now, if any of these first 4 bosses take them multiple pulls, I'm deeply worried about anybody else's ability to kill them anytime soon.
Yeah, the average Mythic guild also just hates like non-linear difficulty in raids.
Yeah, when we talk about walls, right? One of the characteristics that's true of a lot of walls, I don't think it's required for the definition to be met, is that it's a boss that's harder than the ones that come afterwards, right? And
There's a lot of Mythic guilds as well.
Yeah, people call those walls in a nice positive connotation in the Race to World First sense, and then a month later they call them guild killers, and everybody's mad about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and now we'll move on to Max's guess of Ovanax. He put 25.
Yeah.
So this is where he's believing the instant starts to ramp up.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty common guess for Ovanax is somewhere in that, double digit but low double digit count range.
Yeah, I agree. And then Nexus Princess, he has at 70.
Yeah.
So difficult, but not insane.
He's been pretty generous to that fight. I feel like that fight really could go a couple of different ways in terms of tuning. That fight lives or dies by tuning, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine it getting much over 70 because just the way that the mechanics on that encounter work.
Exactly.
It's hard for, if it's killable this week, Liquid are going to get that execution down. It just doesn't have that many mechanics, right? You think about a fight like Ansurek, it's like, okay, there's 50 moving parts on this fight, right? Like, there's a lot to learn. Even on Mythic, Nexus Princess is one extra twist and then a lot more, execution perfection required than the lower difficulties. But if it's killable with week 1 gear, it'll be killed before the 100 pull count, I suspect.
What's the enrage on that fight? 7 minutes?
Yeah, it's at least on the lower difficulties, it's that last intermission just after it does 10 of the pie slices, it starts just blasting all 6 squadrons.
I think it's 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's somewhere in that range, yeah.
Where it's like, I feel like it's difficult to have like a super long.
Yeah, I mean, I would be hyped for if it takes us 70 pulls to get to Enrage, and then we're like, okay, they got to find 7% more damage. I will be the happiest camper ever. That would be cool.
That would be cool. I mean, because that's Stone Legion Generals-esque, and I think that in general, very strongly designed single target patchwork fights.
Those Sludge Fist-esque.
What
you said Stone Legion Generals, and
Sludge Fist.
I was
Sludge
my heart.
Fist-esque. Sorry, Sludge Fist-esque. Where it's very strong designed patchwork fights. I feel like there's some of the cooler bosses.
Yeah, those are always my favorites.
Ashok
was so much fun.
was cool too.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. And then Silken Court, he puts at 250, which he has higher than Ansurek, just to jump ahead.
I could also buy that.
Yeah?
Yeah, 250 for Silken Court. I can see that happening.
I'm so excited for Silken Court. I mean, the Mythic mechanic is just so absurdly unfair that I can't wait to see if it is actually doable, because there's a large part of me that thinks you could give me 50 years of trying to beat that fight without seeing any other guild do it, and I would not be able to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, really that confusing?
Yeah, I mean, it's
chaos.
I don't know how you're supposed to do it. I don't understand. There's no way. It can't be done. It's impossible. It's mathematically impossible already.
Does it have
it now.
Like similar vibe to Tindril, where it's just so much happening all at the same time?
It's like Maiden of
nonstop?
Virtue slapped on top of Tendril Sage Swift.
Yeah, it feels a little bit more of kind of like Tindril was difficult because the pace of mechanics was so high.
Yeah.
Right? You were just dealing with 20 different things in a 20-second window. Silken Court definitely has some of that, but also the individual mechanics feel harder. Right, Tindril's mechanics were each individually easy, and it was mostly the overlap and the tempo of that fight. And then the seeds were also one nuclear difficulty mechanic. Silken Court feels like the mechanics each individually are a little bit easier, except that Mythic mechanic, which is present for the whole fight, reminds me of the seeds with how perfect you have to be for it. And then the tempo is probably a little bit lower on average to compensate compared to Tindril. If that tempo is high, then...
Yeah, the reason I said Maiden of Virtue is because Maiden of Virtue had that one-shot mechanic too, where it's just kind of weird like that.
Mm-hmm. All right, and now the final boss, Ansurek. He has at 200.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dies Thursday of week 2. I guess I don't know if it dies Thursday of week 2, mostly because we're done with Heroic-ish, right?
So, yeah, here's the part that I think is maybe not internally consistent with Max's predictions is he thinks it's going to be one-shot bosses for the first 4, and then less than 100 pulls to take out Ovanax and Nexus Princess combined. 250 pulls for Silken Court and 200 for Ansurek is definitely a lot, but does that get us to Thursday of week 2 without long splits? Maybe he thinks that we're going to need to go and do a bunch of splits to gear up for one of those fights or something, but I kind of suspect that if these pull counts are right, the Ansurek death date might be earlier than Thursday week 2.
So what? We need to do some Mythic Plus for Myth Track crests?
Yeah, Mythic Plus to spam some Gilded crests, but you actually don't need to do that as much if you think you can one-shot the first 4 bosses without it, because those will drop Gilded crests.
That's true, yeah. But I guess it also kind of depends.
Either way, it's only going to be a couple hours to get your cap from M+.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, there will be stuff. So
stuff to do.
this is an interesting thing to talk about, is like what Tuesday is going to look like, because this is our first time seeing a heroic week in years. Are there going to be splits that need to get done on Tuesday? How much time is going to be spent farming Mythic Plus? Because there's Gilded Crest, there's hero gear, there's 613 hero gear to be gained. Specifically, there's trinkets, right? We know Arakara Sackbrood is getting nerfed next week.
It's still a very good trinket.
People are still mostly going to want to wear that thing. There's a bunch of other good trinkets people can pick up from the dungeons as well. So how much of Tuesday is going to be spent gearing? How much of Wednesday is going to be spent gearing? Are they going to get into Mythic on Tuesday? Or will that be something that gets pushed later in the week? Because in previous races, without the last 3 where we didn't have the heroic week, there were splits going on until like Friday, right?
Yeah.
I think that would be a mistake this time, because it's less valuable to do the second round of splits than the first one, and there's some concern that if you spend too much time in splits, Echo are going to come in and just go into Mythic and get world first, while you're doing splits, and that's something you really don't want to happen. But it's definitely a very interesting strategic decision. I can't wait to see what the guilds decide to do.
I will say also in general, I think that crafting, so basically after you hit all these one-shot bosses, then you start to look to craft what you're going to craft. Most people, so embellishments in general kind of suck this expansion.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are looking to actually double up their sparks and craft like a two-handed weapon. If you get a weapon off of like one of these first 4 bosses that are one-shots, so you're definitely going to kill these first 4 bosses, but I think before you start your crafts, and then maybe we start taking a break, look to do Mythic Plus to kind of get some of those Gilded Crests that you're talking about, and then look to craft some of our pieces, and then just kind of ramp up. That's kind of what I'm expecting from our day 1, but then we're just kind of done. I mean, there's some small upgrades that you can get, like you're talking about the Sackbrood, but like I think that we're like almost ready to just like fully go into Mythic then and there.
Yeah, I think so too. There used to be this old way of doing things where you would go into Mythic first and see how far you could get, and then be like, oh, we need to gear out whatever class to move forward. But now they've got so many players where they kind of have every possible comp geared, and then all the analysts have just been working on things that they kind of already have a good gauge of what to bring in, I believe. But yeah, so I think you're right. They probably do some of the heroic stuff, then go blast the first 4, and then maybe just finish the night out doing some chores, and then from like that next day, it's just going to be Mythic the whole time, which is very exciting.
Dude, I'm stoked. I was not a big fan of splits. I don't know if you guys are split enjoyers. I'm not a huge fan of splits.
I love splits. I wish there was a way we could do more splits in the race to world first. I feel like 15 is just not enough characters, and maybe next time we could have a normal week and a heroic week, and then another heroic week after that, and then we could really just be doing Delve week. I think it'd be really good.
When I heard that they were doing 16 splits, I was just like, oh,
what a time to be alive. Yeah.
So many characters.
Thank you, early access, for all that extra time.
I mean, most of the time you can't like level and gear characters on expansion launch that quick, except for this expansion where you could level and fully gear your character immediately in 2 hours.
Yeah, it was the perfect storm to go crazy like they've done this expansion. Okay, well, I'm going to pull this laptop over here, and we can look at some of the prep payoffs
that laptop looks really great.
Oh, yeah, this one?
Is that an Alienware?
Oh, no way.
It is.
Oh, my gosh.
They make laptops too?
Alienware.
That is crazy.
I'm not sure the exact numbers that come after Alienware, but
Home of the Alienware training facility?
Yeah, Alienware.
That's where we are?
Santa Monica, California. Beautiful. All right, so we can look at their eye level. Sorry. Oh, it's this tab.
Google search.
Go to Google.